Okay, it's time for budgeting. And we'll be talking about budgeting a fair bit in class because you're going to do a project on budgeting. But we'll go through the basics here today and, as I said, talk about it more in class. So what's a budget? Well, a budget is both a noun and a verb, not to turn this into an English class. But what do I got here? Is this the noun? This is the verb. This is the action word. To budget, if you're budgeting, it's the process of creating a plan to spend your money. Okay, this is a good idea to have a plan when you're spending your money. Not just to spend your money willy-nilly, I love that expression. Not just to spend the money without thinking about it, but actually to have a plan. It's okay to spend money on things you really enjoy, even frivolous things, as long as you've planned for it. But just to spend money without thinking about it, without planning, is not smart. So that's the process of budgeting. However, that's also a noun. A budget is an actual thing. It's a financial plan that balances your income and your expenses. Okay? Ideally, the amount of income coming in is at least as much, if not more, than expenses. If it is more, then you have some room for savings. And in that way, you balance the two out. Income we've talked about before. Income is money coming into you, right? So your wage, your salary, all sorts of things. We'll talk about that later. And expenses, of course, money going out, things that you're purchasing and paying for. All right, say you're interested in budgeting. You're like, hey, that's a good idea. I think I should start budgeting. It's kind of a three-step process to start budgeting. The first thing, and this is the hardest part, is you want to track spending. You want to actually look at every single thing you spend. You want to record it for at least 1 month. So if you had, credit cards and bank cards, you could decide, all right, I'm not going to use any cash this month. I'm going to put everything on my cards, and then when I look at my statements at the end of the month, I can look at all my spending. Or you could, take a little notebook around with you, and every single time you buy something or purchase something, you could write it in a notebook. Or you could keep all your receipts for the whole month, and at the end of the month, you'd have a record of all your spending. Why do you do that? Because you look for trends. You look for where you're spending most of your money. Wow, it looks like I'm spending 60% of my money on food and entertainment. Maybe that's too much. So it just gives you a sense of where you put, which areas, which categories you're spending your money in. Okay, the second thing to do when you're making a budget is to identify your income. Now, when I say income, the first thing you probably think of is a job. And yeah, that is definitely a source of income for many people, the biggest source of income for most people, but it's not the only form of income. Think of other ways you could make money as a teenager. Part-time job, babysitting, delivering newspapers. It's probably more a suburban thing, but maybe some of you deliver newspapers. Getting an allowance from your parents. Hey, if it's a regular allowance, that counts as income. Getting gifts, right? Many of us on our birthdays and Christmas and things like that, you don't get an actual present per se from grandparents and stuff. You might get a monetary amount, and that is actually considered income. So you look at how much you spend, you look at how much you have coming in, how much income there is, and then what you want to do is you want to look at fixed and variable expenses. So we're going to talk about those in a second, and needs and wants. Okay, and once you've done that, you'll be in a position to make some decisions about how to switch your budget up and save more money. So, what are fixed expenses? A fixed expense is an expense that doesn't change. It stays the same every single month. So, what are some examples of this? It would not be something, when I ask this in class, often people say, food. They say, that's fixed because you always have to buy food. Yeah, but the thing is, it changes from month to month. 1 month you might spend $300 on food, the next month you might spend $400 on food. I'm talking about the actual dollar amount is the same from month to month. So examples of that would be something like a car payment. When you take out a car loan, they tell you, all right, your monthly payment is $862, and the next month it'll be $862, and the month after that, $862, etc. Netflix subscription, I can't remember what it is. Is it $10? Is it $15? Whatever it is, it's the same month after month after month. Now, of course, it could change eventually. They might say, sorry, we've added $1 on. Well, now you have a new fixed expense. Doesn't mean it will never change. It just means, for the short term anyway, it's staying exactly the same. A bus pass costs the same every month. Those are some examples. So you can probably guess what a variable expense is. It's something that varies from month to month. Now, it doesn't necessarily change every month. It's possible that your food bill was $287 last year and it's last month, and it's $287 again this month, but it definitely might change from month to month. So this could be food, entertainment cost, fuel for your car, parking for your car, etc., etc. Lots of things are variable expenses. So fixed expenses are really easy to enter into your budget, right? You know how much it's going to be every month. Variable expenses can be a little harder. This is why you might need to look at your spending over a number of months, and then you kind of take the average. Okay, what's also important is to figure out what your needs are and what your wants are. Now, it's hard when you're, trying to be honest with yourself about what you need. It's hard not to say, I need to go out for dinner once a week. It just makes me feel so happy. I need to do it. It's not really a need to go out for dinner every week. Now, it is a need to eat, because needs are things that are necessary for survival. We're talking food, water, shelter. You need clothes, education. Now, for some people, maybe you're at the stage of their life where that's not a need for me anymore. I've got all the education I need. But for young people, often education is a need. And healthcare, right? We all need to make sure that if we do get sick, we're getting looked after. So those are actually probably the only needs. I'm not saying that that's the only thing you should spend money on. I'm just saying it's good to know what things, no kidding, you need these things. Even in this group, right? Clothing. Yes, clothing is a need. But getting the new Louis Vuitton belt for $792, that's probably not a need. That's more a want. Going to Mark's Work Wearhouse and getting the belt for $12, that would meet the need. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying it's good to know what needs are and what wants are. A want obviously is something that's desirable, but it's not essential. It adds comfort to our life, adds pleasure to our lives, but if we didn't have it, we could still survive. So these would be things like books, and movies, and bike, and makeup, and pets, and etc. Is there something on that list that you were like, no, but my dog, I need that? Well, you know what? As much as you love your dog, you don't need it. But of course, you should spend money on your dog if it makes you happy. Now, a bike is the one on the list that maybe you could say is a need. If your bike is your way of getting around everywhere, then maybe it's actually a need. But you want to get really clear with yourself about which things you need and which things you want. And it's the want area where you're going to be able to make some differences in your budget. Okay, here's a couple questions. First question, here's someone's budget just for expenses, though. It doesn't talk about their income or anything. Just for expenses, it has rent, utilities, so that's when you have your own place. Utilities are like the gas, the electricity, the heating, all that kind of stuff. Food, transportation, that could be a car they own, but from the price, the $150, it's probably a bus pass or something. Clothing that they're buying every month. And personal expenses, right? You need to go get something at the drugstore, need to buy a hairbrush or lip gloss or shoelaces or whatever. And savings. They have their savings as an expense here. So the question asks, what's the percentage for each item? Now this might seem like, well, what's the point of doing this? Well, there's actually all sorts of sources online that'll tell you the recommended amount of your income that should be set aside for rent, the recommended amount that should be set aside for food. So it is useful to know the percentage. All right, well, I guess we got to figure out how to find percentages here. You remember how to do this, right? What's my favorite way to do it? It's the good old percent over 100 equals part over whole. Now, the first one I'm going to take a second to do. The other ones we'll whip through. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we can do is we can always put down 100. Next thing, do we know the percent? No, that's what we're trying to find out is a percent. So I'll put n equals. Now, I'm doing this one, right? I'm doing the rent, and I want to know what percent 1,250 is. So we're finding what 1,250 is of what? Of the total. So the first thing we have to actually figure out is what's the total. So how do we do that? We add all these numbers together, all these here. 1,250 plus 200 plus 400 plus 150 plus 75 plus 125 plus 200. And I believe if you add them all up, you'll get $2,400. So what we want to find is, what is 1,250 of 2,400? So which one's the part and which one's the whole? Well, the whole obviously is the 2,400 and the part is the 1,250. All right, so once we solve this, we'll have our percent. So how do we do it? we cross multiply. We multiply the 100 times the 1,250, and then we divide by the 2,400. And if you do that, you get 52%. I'm going to round it to the nearest whole number. So then the next one we'd want to do is 200. Well, what's the only thing that would change? You'd still have n for the percent, you'd still have 100, the whole is still 2,400. The only thing that changes, you'd have 200 here now. So you'd be going 100 times 200 divided by 2,400. And that's 8%. Okay, and you just continue on like that. I don't know if we need to do them all. Hey, look at the next one's twice as much. 200 to 400. So guess what? It's going to be twice as much here too. It's going to be 16%. Little hack there for you. The next one, the 150, well, put 150 in here and 150 in here. 100 times 150 divided by 2,400. You get 6.25, so I guess I'm putting down 6. Next one's 75. Hey, you know what? 75 is half of 150. Why don't we put 3%? Okay, 125. 125 is a tenth of this, so that's 5.2%. I'll put 5%. I'm just showing off now. And 200 is half of 400, so if it was 16% here, it'd be 8% there. Now they should all add up to 100%. Again, I'm sorry I just kind of cheated with all these, but you're going to do the same thing over and over and over, just like we did here, right? I just didn't think you'd want to watch me do that. Okay, now when you add these all up, it should come up to 100%, but it doesn't. It comes up to 98. What's going on? It's because of all the rounding I did. And in fact, when I just like cut things in half, that was probably a bad way to do it, because if I already rounded and then cut in half, I could have gotten some pretty inaccurate answers. So for once when I do these videos, I'm not going to nail it in with the exact answers. I just want to give you a sense. As long as you understand the first couple I did, I think you can fill in the rest on your own. Now look, I found something here online. The 50-30-20 rule. It says to put 50% of your income towards necessity, like housing and bills. It says you should put 20% towards financial goals, like paying off debt or saving. And finally it says 30% should go to wants. So I don't know if the 50-30-20 rule works very well with this example, but it gives you a sense of why you do find out percentages, so you can take a look at where you're spending most of your money and whether it's an appropriate amount of your income. Okay, we're going to make a monthly budget now for Karen based on the following information. So there's going to be a couple parts to our budget. One part's going to be income, and another one's going to be expenses. And almost everybody will have more expenses than income. It's a rare individual that has more income than expenses. However, the dollar amounts for the income hopefully is going to be bigger than expenses, but there'll be more things listed in expenses. So let's go through and look at all the income first. I think I might have put it near the top. So she works 20 hours per week, that's income. She receives a weekly allowance of $50 from her parents. She babysits, and then pays, spends, eats. This is all expenses. So here's our 3 income here. And remember, we're making a monthly budget. So the first thing it says here is that she works 20 hours per week at Safeway, and her wage is $16.50 an hour. So let's figure out her wage per week to start. How would we do that? Well, she works 20 hours per week, and her wage is $16.50. So we would go 20 times $16.50. And if you do that, you get $330. But wait a minute, that's just a week. We want to know for month. So approximately how many weeks are there in a month? 4. So we're going to go 330 times 4 and get $1,320. So the first thing we'll put down here is Safeway work, or I'll just put work, and it's $1,320. Okay, that's done. She receives a weekly allowance of $50 from her parents. So it's every week she gets $50. And we said again, there's 4 weeks in a month, so that is $200. So we have allowance, $200. Pretty nice allowance. $200 a month. She babysits once a week for 5 hours. So again, and she charges $14 an hour. Is that a good wage? It seems pretty high. So 5 hours and 14 per hour. So that is $70. That's per week. But again, we want to know it monthly, so you have to multiply that 70 times 4. 280 is what she gets per month for babysitting. So let's get a total income. We add these together and you get $1,800. Okay, it's time for expenses. They start right here, pays for her own Spotify. So that is already per month. We don't have to do any calculating. So for expenses, we have Spotify, which is $9 a month. We have clothing, and she's done the average. I guess she's looked over a bunch of months and she's figured out she spends about $150 per month on clothes. She eats out once per week for an average cost of $22. Okay, well, wait a minute. That's every week. So we got to go 22 times 4 and get 88 for eating out. So eat out $88. I guess that doesn't include her coffees because she has a coffee every weekday. Oh my. So there's 5 weekdays and she has a coffee every day of the week. So that's 425 times 5, which is 2125. Now that's in 1 week. So again, we got to take that amount and multiply it by 4 to get for the whole month. And she's spending $85 a month on her coffees. I'll try not to be judgmental here. She pays rent to her parents. I guess they have a deal that while she's a university student, she can pay a lower rent, live at home but pay a rent. So it's only $300. She also needs to put aside $400 a month for university to pay at the end of the year. See, again, smart. You don't wait until the end of the year and say, I need $4,000 or whatever. You plan ahead and you say, in order to have money, I'm going to need to save for university. And finally, her phone costs her $80 a month. So again, let's get a total, and I'm sorry I haven't left enough room here. You add all these up in this long list, you get $1,112. Now, what you could do is you could add one more level in your expenses, call it savings, and make it so it adds up to $1,800. What I prefer to do is to have a third section. You have your income, you have your expenses, and then you have your savings. So ignore all this. Savings. And the way savings works is it's equal to, as you can probably guess, your income take away your expenses. So in this case, it's going to be $1,800 take away $1,112, which means the total savings are $688 a month. That's good. Well done. Nice job, Karen. All right, so this gives you a sense of the way a budget works. Your income, your expenses, your savings. So, sorry, I'm going to erase this a little bit now. Name one thing Karen could do to increase her savings. What if she wanted even more? She's like, I'd really like to get up to, $750 savings or something. What could she do? Come on. There's a lot of different answers you could say here. You could say work more, ask her parents for a bigger allowance, babysit more. But there is something that's like a sore thumb. It stands out so much. I even commented on it. Coffee. That is a lot of money to be spending every month on coffee. Why not buy less coffee? You can still have coffee. Have it at home or something. Or just give it up. I don't like coffee. Anyway, I'll keep that to myself. Name 3 things that Karen may have forgotten to include in her budget. Now, I gotta say, there's a lot of expenses here, but I think there could be a lot more that she's forgotten. There's all sorts of things you could say here. What are 3 things she may have forgotten? How about transportation? How's she getting around? How about haircuts? Manicures, pedicures. Netflix? Is she a Netflix user? Most of us are. Entertainment? What's this girl doing for fun? She ever go out to the movies, go bowling, go to the club? What's she doing? So, there's a lot of things. These aren't the right answers. These are only possible things. And when you're making a budget for me as a project, I'm expecting you to do a lot of expenses. Okay, I hope that makes sense. We'll talk more about budgets in class. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.